Good morning and welcome to our live video. I am streaming here in our Facebook group, Women Healing from Emotional Abuse with Power, Passion, and Pleasure. And you may also be finding this on my YouTube channel, Pleasure for Health, or Elsa Kepi later on. So I am Elsa Kepi and I'm here to talk to you today about self-regulation and how to overcome self-sabotaging episodes or behaviors, and just learning about ourselves enough to know when we need to break free and express more of ourselves and when we need to rein it in and kind of contain what we're feeling. And I don't mean contain as in repress. So there's a difference between repressing our emotions and our feelings and containing that and just being comfortable with that discomfort. So that's what we're going to go today and cover that in a little more depth. This was actually brought up by someone in the Facebook group, so thank you very much for bringing this topic up. It's really important because I think that it affects all of us in some way. We tend to probably be either one of those people that is over-expressive. We tend to just kind of splat our feelings and emotions everywhere very easily. Or we may conversely be someone who holds in and restrains and to a fault, hold ourselves in. So often the self-sabotage can express itself either way, right? We can hold ourselves back from doing what we really need to do, or we could end up over-expressing and just kind of pushing everyone away and not actually getting to what is actually going on. So typically, I would say that self-regulation has become a buzzword in the psychology world and helping, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, all these ways of, okay, if you feel this, then here's your steps and here's how we're going to, act in a better way. Here's how we're going to take your feelings and go down this other path. So more control of our ego over our feelings will lead to, a better relational aspect in the world. We'll be able to act more constructively in our lives. And that is true up to a certain point. But what often happens is that super controlling ego that may be very strong controls, and then we just lose it, right? The straw that breaks the camel's back, we might call it, right? You get the one thing that is too much for you to handle in that way, and you lose it, and everything comes flooding out, or you self-sabotage. You were doing great on your diet until all of a sudden, you got whatever news, and that's it. You binged on everything. You were doing great, controlling your anger, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's like over, you're angry about everything. So it often comes from restraining ourselves with our ego so much that we're not actually learning about integrating what we're feeling in our body. We're just tamping it down. So it's kind of like having a really controlling parent for this little screaming toddler, and the parent is really good at kind of managing the toddler. But at some point, we still haven't found out why the toddler is screaming in the first place, right? So if we really want to transform and find out what is happening in the body and why are we feeling what we're feeling, and maybe how can we work with those feelings to both accept and also learn to contain and learn to express in a more healthy way, which doesn't mean control. It means I can feel this. I know how I want to express it. That will be healthy for me. I can do that, and I can sort of take a breath after and feel, have released some of that energy. It's very much like a breath. Like if you think about every time you take a breath in, you take in and you're charging, you're building energy as you breathe in. And then you hold it up here with tension, right? You're holding your breath for a moment, hopefully not too long. So you hold that tension of the full breath, And then you breathe out and you release and you discharge that tension. And hopefully, if you have a nice breath cycle, you breathe in, hold, breathe out, and then you do it again. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. So, you know, the age-old advice of take a deep breath really works because we're actually practicing taking in energy and charge, which could be tantamount to, I feel angry or I feel joyful, whatever you're feeling. I'm going to sit with that feeling for a moment and then I'm going to let it go. I'm going to discharge that feeling. And if we have that nice up and down cycle, we don't get stuck anywhere. And so often if you get stuck at any of those points and stop the flow, you know, you get different things manifesting. You know, if you don't take a breath in at all, you have no energy, you're kind of depressed, right? Like if you were stuck at that bottom point, it's like, I don't have any energy or willpower to do anything. So then when you breathe in, if you're stuck at the breathing in energy charging phase, you're probably taking in energy from everyone around you. You become kind of vampiric in that you're always needing to take in energy, try to get yourself up. So there's some things that manifest on there. If you get stuck at the top, you might notice that you're kind of stuck with this overcharged, like hypervigilant kind of, I don't know what to do, but I'm up to here and really tense. So you get too much tension, you might get high blood pressure, different things like that. And then if you get stuck on the discharging, you know, that could be the too much expression, too much spilling out of all of your energy all over everything. Could be emotional, could be, you know, overdoing, overworking, over exercising, over anything as you're trying to discharge the energy. And then again, you're back to that end state. So again, we're trying to get that nice flow of energy. And so what we call that in a somatic kind of psychological way might be that we would have different ways of charging, of taking in. So we might, you know, if we're depressed, we might have a different exercise to help a depressed person find some energy in their body, build a bit of energy in their body, because we want to get them out of that bottom state. So we want to build some energy. And then we want them to hold that slightly higher energy level than they normally would have. It's going to feel uncomfortable because it's different than what you've been used to. So if you're used to no energy, like I can't get out of bed kind of place, and you charge your body, even if it's just with breath a little bit, and there's different ways to do that. I'm not going to go into all the techniques in this video, but there are lots of techniques and ways to build energy for different types of emotions and different types of people. And that's something that a somatic therapist might guide you through. So that's one of those things that they might help you find these exercises for you. But as you build that energy, then you have to learn to contain it. And herein lies the self-regulation of that. So you want to hold that extra level of energy for a moment and notice it and be like, oh, what would life be like if I am slightly more energized in the world, right? And that's a little uncomfortable. And then we actually want to learn how to, you know, discharge that extra energy. So with depression, you might have a discharge, you might have a crying, right? There might be grief as well under that depression, or anger or something else. So you might have a body position, might be hanging forward, something like that would discharge that and allow you to just soften enough to have a good cry or something. So you'd have built up some energy, you hold it, you learn to contain that a little bit, and then you learn to let it go. So this is actually teaching yourself to go through that cycle so that you're regulating your own self. And part of doing this, and you know, as a trainee in some of these therapeutic modalities, like I would actually try out, you know, grief, depression, anger, fear, horror, joy. I would try out building that as a charge, holding it, releasing it, and then just soaking in that kind of moment of like, we've been through a whole cycle. and noticing, how did that feel in my body? Was that familiar to me? Was that particular emotion familiar? Was it uncomfortable? Could I find that emotion for me? So lots of times we have certain emotions that we kind of stop ourselves feeling particularly, and other emotions that we allow ourselves to feel. So we might be fine doing this pathway, oh, I'm joyful, I'm going to build, I'm excited, I'm joyful, I'm going to hold it, I can release it, woohoo, have a great time. And that all feels good. But when it comes to grief, well, am I going to allow myself to build the energy of grief? Am I going to hold that energy of grief? Am I going to hold my heart? And then am I going to let myself have a good cry? That might not be so comfortable for me. And so therein lies some of this, I don't want to feel certain emotions. I don't want to feel certain things because that's too uncomfortable. That's not allowed. Maybe anger wasn't allowed for you and your family. Many times, I'm genderizing this, but a lot of times women weren't allowed to be angry, men weren't allowed to be sad. If you wanted to split it up very simply in a binary way like that, there's certain emotions that our family was comfortable with and ones that we weren't in our family of origin or growing up. And so we tend to take on those comfort levels. So, fear as well can be overwhelming. Any of these emotions can be overwhelming if we are feeling them, and feeling any of those takes us away from our groundedness. So to kind of backtrack, this explains a bit of that cycle: discharging, holding, and containing, and then releasing. But we have to talk about having a body that has the capacity to do that at all. And I would say that, some people have a harder time getting to a place where they're even able to start working on that. And that might be because they're really ungrounded. They're really dissociated, potentially. Maybe they've had a lot of trauma, and it's hard for them to stay present in their body and actually work with this. And so I would say definitely you'd want to look at getting some support and help with a therapist so that they can watch you as you work with this flow, to make sure that you are still in your body and you're not just getting overwhelmed or flooded, they sometimes call it, by these emotional states, and you're not staying grounded, right? So if you feel a little bit of fear and then whoop, you've dissociated, or you run away, or you're just, uncontrollably anxious, that isn't going to be very therapeutic for you. So I'm explaining this in a somewhat simplified version. And if you feel at all that this isn't something you want to do by yourself at home, that's exactly why we have somatic therapeutics and people that can help you with body work and the psychotherapy part, and that can hold space for you to be in these different states and to make sure that you're grounded. Even I'm not so much trained in shamanism, but I think a lot of these traditional ways of doing things, or other energetic ways, would be to have somebody holding that space with you that's helping to keep you grounded in your body. So, you want to make sure you're doing that and very gently working with this. So at the beginning, you would just charge a little bit and hold a little bit and discharge a little bit. And then you can build that resilience to holding a lot of emotion, right? So it's something that is a practice. It's not something that you're going to do right away in 1 week. It's something that you practice. And it's like breathing. If you practice breathing, you get a better understanding and a better flow of breath. If you've stopped your breathing for a long time, maybe, forever in your life, if you didn't have a very safe place as a kid, you may always have breathed not fully. So to learn to breathe more fully and to feel this full range of your own emotional states takes a while. So that's just a caveat to say, do get some support with this. But just to give you the theory of why you might do that. So, in our society today, just to kind of bring this to a larger picture, in our society today, we often have this sort of narcissistic, hedonistic way of saying, but I want to be angry right now and just blah, I'm sad right now. Everybody should, know that. I'm happy right now. I want to go do this. I want this thing right now. I want it right now. And this kind of expressiveness is very common and probably healthy at a certain time of our development. Let's say, I don't know, around 2 years old or so, when you see young kids expressing themselves and just, they don't even know whether something's good for them or not or whatever. They just want to express, they want to experience. And this is this is a time when ideally parents would kind of contain, right? They might say, well, that's great. I know you want ice cream right now. We're about to have dinner, and then maybe we have ice cream for dessert, right? Like maybe you have a bit of this other, some protein and some greens, whatever, first, and then we do that. And you start kind of containing the child to understand that sometimes you have a desire and you hold it for a little bit to see if it's actually going to be good for you or good for the world or whatever, and before you act on it. So this as well, this kind of, in some cases, we've grown up without too much of this guidance. And it doesn't mean that you want a parent that says no to everything. That might squash you completely. But you do want a nurturing kind of container, right, to explore in, right? We don't always know what's best for us. And so we have to start doing that for ourselves as we mature. This is what maturation or, becoming an adult requires. If we want to be a conscious and aware, regulated adult, we have to learn how to ask ourselves, oh, this is what I feel, or this is what I want. Is that going to be good? Should I ask myself, is this good for me? Is this in my highest interest? Is this good for my family, my community, my world? Maybe I should sit on this, sleep on it for a night before I just go ahead and do it. So, a practice, a spiritual practice that one of my teachers said to me is, ask yourself 3 times. If it comes to you 3 times or more, then it's something to listen to. But if it's like, oh my God, I want a glass of wine right now, and then you just go drink it before you've really kind of settled in, you just kind of going, there's no self-regulation. There's no kind of questioning of our higher self, whether this is a good idea or not. We're not kind of parenting ourselves. If I am like, oh my gosh, I really would love a glass of wine tonight, and then I think about it and I'm like, well, maybe tonight's not a great night. Maybe I had a glass last night, and maybe I have to give a talk later tonight. So, it might be better to have some water tonight and just make sure I'm hydrated and really clear. So maybe tonight's not the night for that, and I'll look forward to it, tomorrow. And then I can kind of regulate and contain. I mean, that's using all of our systems, our brain, our feelings, our body. We want to have all of those working together for our best interest. So, asking yourself, if that thing comes back to you, if you say, no, that's interesting, I'm going to wait for a bit, and then it comes to you again. And then if it comes a few times, this urge, then it is interesting to look at. Now, if you do have an addiction, or, a lot of us do have these addictive behaviors, and it's like, oh yeah, it's coming to me all the time. I want it all the time. That's something to look at too. And again, that might be something you need some outside support with, noticing, well, is that actually in my highest interest to have that thing all the time? Or do I need to, work to kind of let that voice calm itself down and work on some of these other things over here? So again, it's this nuance, and I would say that it's not an easy one to, work through, especially, going cold turkey on anything it's kind of like just putting that control on. What we actually, I think, really do want, I mean, certain things are built into our body that will be uncontrollable, and certain addictive substances and stuff might be that, so it's better to avoid that altogether. But when we're working with things like relational or love addiction, or, sort of these types of nuances, we can't just not ever love, right? We can't ever not have a relationship. So we have to actually work with that and really get to know ourselves. So I would say working with this idea of the breath, the in-breath, the charging, the holding, the tension of that, and the discharging, and how to work with that in a healthy way. So I'm just going to talk you through. So let's say grief, for instance. building your awareness of your grief. You want to ground yourself. So if you know how to ground, rub your feet on the floor, get yourself really grounded, put your hand on your belly and do some breaths. And just kind of be aware of your grief. And maybe what you do, I don't have one here. I have my, like, if you have a pillow or something, you want to like hold your pillow and just become aware of your grief. You might even say something like, I'm sad to lose you, or whatever. Could be a stuffy, if you still have one, lying around somewhere, a blanket. And you just become aware of that. So that's the building of noticing your grief. And then you might even reach out. You might say, I miss you, that kind of thing. Be aware of your grief. And then you might, to sort of sit with that grief, you might hold your body. So you might hold yourself and rock. You might see this in a lot of videos on somatic exercise or something. You might hold yourself and just like, I'm really sad, right? I'm holding myself in my grief. And you might even talk to the person that you miss, and just have that holding. You might hold your legs all curled up too. So really holding that tension of, I'm feeling really sad. And then to discharge, you might have put your legs out in front and lean forward and just let things go. So you might, it's like a forward seated forward fold if you were doing yoga, like just leaning forward and, you know, maybe pushing. So if you have a towel around your feet and you push your feet into the towel as you lean forwards, you start feeling your feet and your legs kind of pushing. So you get to actually use the muscles of your legs a little bit. And that helps you to sort of release grief. Another way I've heard is just circling your wrists, circling your ankles is helpful to release grief very gently. So, you know, then you just like, oh, I feel really sad and now I'm going to let it go. So that's a little bit of a cycle of what you could do with grief. There's different exercises you could do. You can make up your own, but that's the idea that I'm putting across. And what that leads to, but circling back to our self-regulation idea, what that leads to is an awareness of what you're feeling and a kind of mastery of how to work with it so that you don't feel overwhelmed and flooded by these things. And therefore, you're like, oh, I actually am really grieving. I know how to work with that. I'm going to go spend half an hour doing that little cycle and letting myself feel that. And when you're done, you're not going to have these compulsive avoidance tactics come up. That's been my experience anyway. And it may take a while if you've really developed very strong coping strategies that involve masking what you're feeling, whether it's binge eating or addictions or overworking or getting into another relationship, whatever those are for you, those behaviors, you kind of have to rein yourself in a little bit and take some time to really work with your own self. So if this has really intrigued you and interested you, I would love to hear from you. I have a number of programs and ways of working with me if this is something you would like to work with. I do work online or in person. I have a retreat center. You can come stay. There's some online courses you could start with. I have a blog. I have this Facebook group. So please do stay in touch. And reach out if you're interested in working with this. I also do training programs for therapists, for body workers to learn about this stuff, to help support other people with it. So that might be something you're interested in down the road as well. As you go on your own journey, you may want to offer that to others. So reach out to me. ailsakepi.com is a great place to start. You can also find me at pleasureforhealth.com. I'd be happy to hear from you. You can book a consult and we can have a chat about what is the best way to move forward for you. So thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.